What do you believe is one of the most riveting truisms about life? To live life to the fullest and always reach for new opportunities, or that life is adverse and unforeseeable without a line of sight of contingency. Whether you've been on this earth for only 5 years, you've known or at least figured out that life is beautiful, but it's unfair. From getting blamed to something that you didn't do, to finding happiness and acceptance in your circumstances. Even the Buddha agreed that life was suffering. I believe a great presenting example of growing to know the universe is in the novel Life of Pi. Throughout this video, I will be putting different occurring motifs from the novel to find the answer of the common question, what does it mean to grow up? At the beginning of the novel, we are introduced to the author's notes, but the author does not identify himself whatsoever. He goes on to tell us about his last book and how it sucked and didn't do numbers. He then tells us that he searches far and wide for this new story to come up with, but he cannot find it. That is until one day he's sitting in a coffee shop and he's approached by an old man named Francis. Francis goes on yapping and tells him that he has a story so good for him that it can make him believe in God. So Francis goes on yapping about this story with this boy named Pi, and this story is so mind-boggling to the author that he goes to find Pi himself. Pi, whose real name is Pasin Moulter Patel, but is rather called Pi because he knows everybody likes to dick ride about his name and call him. Pi is a quite wise boy who spends most of his time indulging in books or wandering around his father's zoo that was located in Pondicherry, India. He believes so strongly in God that he gets so tied up into religion that he makes himself Christian Islam while also being born Hindu. This does cause Pi to get some ghostly stares, but my boy Pi ain't tripping because he believes that all religions are true. As Pi is getting accustomed to his new religion lifestyle, political perspectives are getting more conflicting, and his family is getting more hesitant about staying in India. So they don't. So Pi, his brother, his mother, and his father all book it to Canada and migrate across the Pacific Ocean on a thick-ass boat named the Simpson, with the whole zoo right behind them. Well, in the words of Woody Allen, sooner or later, everything turns to shit. Everything turns to shit when Pi is seemingly tested by faith after a cataclysmic storm sinks the ship and is left as the only survivor. Pi is at shock, starving, and now an orphan, and hopes that everything can't get any worse. But it does when he finds out that he's stuck on the boat with a hyena, a tiger named Richard Parker, an orangutan named OJ, and a broken leg zebra. And everything turns to shit once again when the hyena goes mad for hunger and kills the orangutan and the zebra. At last, Richard Parker reveals himself from under the tarp and pounces onto the hyena. In an attempt for a chance of life, Pi builds a tiny raft off the side of the boat in order to set distance with Richard Parker. Pi found this idea futile and stupid because Richard Parker at any moment could jump in the water and get him. But turns out to be quite effective because Richard Parker leaves him alone, and Pi lives on to see another day. Pi, still starving and scared, decides that time is at hand and he has to make a move. So he decides that he's going to tame Richard Parker. He grabs a whistle and a turtle shell for protection, and it all deems successful. Now that Pi and Richard were best friends and he was no longer an obstacle to hurdle, Pi managed to live out at sea for a very long time with rations and a little bit of water. But that didn't make any of it easy. Things actually got so bad that he had hallucinations of him conversating with Richard Parker, which he wasn't even talking to. he was talking to another Frenchman that was also lost out at sea. So Pi offers to let the Frenchman rest on his boat for the night, but the Frenchman had other opportunities and other things that was on his mind and tries to kill Pi. But my boy Richard Parker ain't playing no games. He tears that ass up immediately. Things get even crazier whenever Pi and Richard Parker come across an island, and things are very nice and cool. That is until Pi bites into one of the fruits and finds teeth. Finding it to be a carnivorous island. After that, Pi and Richard Parker moved on elsewhere, wherever the sea took them. Finally, after 266 days, Pi ends up on the coast of Mexico, and my boy Richard Parker just books it and leaves without even saying goodbye. Pi is then abducted by some fishers and taken to the hospital and is then later on questioned by the Japanese government. Alright, let's get serious. In the first half of the novel, we can already tell that this is a story about the life of Pi. Or is it? When we look deeply into the name of Pi, we find that Pi mentions that in that Greek letters that looks like a shack with a congruent tin roof and that elusive irrational number with which scientists try to understand the universe, I found the refuge. So Pi finds his name as home or somewhere that's safety from the outside world, while the name being irrational with no fixed boundaries. And that's the whole point of the book. To fractionate of the things that we can make sense and the things that we cannot make sense of. But not everything can be rationalized. Some things need a taste of madness. All living things contain a measure of madness that moves them in a strange, sometimes explicable ways. This madness can be saving it. It is in part and parcel of the ability to adapt. Without it, no species will survive. In which this makes life feel adverse and unpredictable at times. We can push through and use certain pieces of faith to give us fuel like understanding karma. The paths to liberation are numerous, but the bank along the way is always the same. The bank of karma, where the liberation account of each of us is credited or debited depending on our actions. Or like how Pi kept going because of his love for faith for God. Yes, so long as God is with me, I will not die. Amen. So what can we pull from this and tie this into our question of what does it mean to grow up? And what we can pull from this is that growing up means to understand that life is adverse and not fair and is mad with unpredictable events, but all can be looked past when you have nothing to look to besides a light of faith. But I can argue that growing up can still be determined and dependent on who you are put around and who you are raised by and how they reveal you to new lessons and new understandings of the universe, bringing you closer to them and the universe as a whole. And the people who I remember played a big part in raising me were my grandparents. And I think that they would know what growing up means out of anybody I would possibly know. So let's ask them.
Okay. Hey, growing up is very important in your life because if you don't want nothing and you don't know how to grow up, you got to know how to grow up. You got to learn how to achieve. Yeah, you got to learn how to achieve and create things that you want in life. Because once you grow up, you got your own car, you got your own money, you got your own apartment, you understand?
Right.
That is growing up,
All right.
you understand?
Manifesting those things into your life.
Yes.
Basically.
If you don't know how to operate with those things, you have nothing.
Yeah, nothing. That's good. That's good.
Whenever you had your family and like you were growing up and like how did they help you grow? How did your family around you help you grow as a person?
Loving me for who I am, helping me to do the things that I wanted to do, and believing in me.